The term racist emerges from the combination of race as a root word denoting human categorization by shared physical traits, ancestry, or perceived characteristics, and the suffix -ist, which signifies a person who believes in, adheres to, or advocates for the root concept. In its technical formation, racist describes an individual who treats race as a fundamental category for understanding human differences, where race encompasses factors such as skin color, facial features, hair texture, and geographic origins. This literal breakdown positions the word as an agent noun, akin to other formations where -ist implies ideological commitment, such as a socialist who supports socialism or a capitalist who upholds capitalism. The word structure thus inherently links belief or advocacy to the notion that race influences or determines human variation, without initially mandating additional layers of interpretation. Historically, the word racist appeared in English in the early 20th century, around 1919, as a noun and adjective, building on the slightly earlier racism from 1902 to 1903. Its emergence replaced older terms like racialist from 1910, which denoted someone emphasizing racial differences or superiority. The technical meaning aligns with the suffix's role in denoting adherence to a doctrine, where race serves as the doctrine's foundation, implying that racial categories explain traits or abilities. This denotative core remains stable, reflecting the word's etymological roots in French and English linguistic patterns, and it underscores a focus on race as a determinant without deviation into unrelated suffixes or meanings. Critically, the word's formation reveals a precise linguistic mechanism, where the components maintain fidelity to their individual definitions. Race as a grouping by human characteristics, and -ist as belief or advocacy. This accuracy in construction allows for an objective examination of how the term identifies individuals who view racial factors as essential, yet it also invites scrutiny of how usage has layered connotations beyond this base. The word's standalone integrity lies in this balance, providing a framework for analyzing its application across contexts without altering its foundational elements. The suffix -ist and its role in racist. The suffix -ist operates as a versatile agentive morpheme in English, systematically forming nouns that designate individuals whose identity or role is defined by their relationship to the root word. Derived historically from Greek -ists through Latin and French mediation, it consistently conveys the sense of a person who engages actively with the base concept, whether through practice, specialization, performance, or ideological commitment. In the specific case of racist, the suffix aligns most closely with its doctrinal and advocacy-oriented functions, positioning the individual as one who subscribes to or promotes race as a central explanatory framework for human variation. This application emphasizes belief in racial categories as determinants of traits, abilities, or worth, rather than mere descriptive awareness of differences. This doctrinal alignment distinguishes -ist in racist from its other possible senses, such as performer or player, which require an activity or practice that can be enacted repeatedly. No corresponding action of performing race or playing race exists in linguistic or conceptual terms, thereby excluding those interpretations and confining the word to the sphere of conviction or advocacy. Similarly, practitioner and specialist meanings do not apply, since professional or expert engagement with race, whether through anthropological fieldwork or genetic research, employs distinct labels such as anthropologist or population geneticist. The suffix in racist thus narrows deliberately to ideological adherence, transforming the neutral root race into a marker of doctrinal stance. The exclusion of creator and user senses further reinforces this restriction. No evidence suggests racist denotes someone who produces race as an object or employs it as an instrument in routine operations. Instead, the word's lexical fixation since its early 20th century emergence anchors it firmly in advocacy for race as a fundamental principle. This fixation preserves the suffix's technical precision while limiting its semantic range in this particular compound, ensuring that racist consistently signals a person who elevates racial factors to explanatory primacy. Critically, the coherence of this formation lies in its fidelity to the suffix's core agentive logic. By foregrounding belief and advocacy, -ist in racist maintains structural integrity across contexts, even as broader applications of the suffix elsewhere demonstrate greater flexibility. The resulting term thus functions as a reliable descriptor for individuals who regard racial categorization not as incidental but as essential to understanding human differentiation, underscoring the suffix's capacity to encode ideological commitment with linguistic economy. Definitions of race underlying racist. The root race within racist refers fundamentally to the categorization of humans into groups distinguished by shared physical traits commonly associated with common ancestry. These traits include observable features such as skin color, hair texture, facial structure, and eye shape, which dictionaries consistently identify as the basis for such divisions. The term implies that these characteristics, regarded as inherited, suffice to delineate distinct human groupings. Historically, definitions of race extended beyond physical markers to encompass behavioral or social qualities, reflecting anthropological assumptions that inherited differences influenced character, intellect, or morality. In the context of racist, this broader historical scope informs the word's implication that racial groupings serve as explanatory mechanisms for human variation. The root thus carries the weight of perceived shared qualities shaped by geography, descent, and adaptation, providing the conceptual foundation for the ideological stance denoted by the full term. The term racist builds directly upon this root by incorporating the belief that such categorizations are not superficial but fundamental to human differentiation. It identifies individuals who treat racial divisions as significant determinants of worth, capacity, or behavior, extending the root's meaning from mere classification to doctrinal significance. Factors such as continental origins and ancestral lineage further enrich the root, allowing racist to denote advocacy for race as a primary lens through which human characteristics are interpreted. Critically, the accuracy of racist as a compound rests on its faithful reflection of race as a multifaceted human characteristic, combined with ist as the marker of belief or advocacy. This denotative fidelity endures regardless of evolving connotations, ensuring that the word's technical structure continues to capture the essence of racial advocacy. The root's emphasis on inherited and perceived differences supplies the precise semantic material that the suffix elevates to an ideological position, preserving the term's internal logical coherence across historical and contemporary applications. Historical classifications shaping racist. Racial classifications emerged systematically during the Enlightenment in the 18th century, marking a pivotal shift toward viewing human diversity through structured, observable criteria. Carolus Linnaeus, in the 10th edition of Systema Naturae, published in 1758, proposed 4 primary varieties of Homo sapiens. Europaeus, white, associated with Europeans and characterized as sanguine and muscular. Americanus, red, linked to indigenous Americans and described as choleric and upright. Asiaticus, yellow, tied to Asians and noted as melancholic and inflexible. And Africanus, black, connected to Africans and labeled phlegmatic and indulgent. This framework not only categorized people by skin color and geography but also attributed behavioral and temperamental traits to each group, laying groundwork for the perception of race as a determinant of human qualities. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach built upon Linnaeus's model in his work on the natural variety of mankind, with key additions from 1775 to 1795, expanding the system to 5 principal varieties. He designated Caucasian, white, encompassing Europeans, West Asians, and North Africans. Mongolian, yellow, covering East Asians. Ethiopian, black, referring to sub-Saharan Africans. American, red or copper red, for indigenous peoples of the Americas. And Malayan, brown, including Southeast Asians and Pacific Islanders. Blumenbach prioritized skin tone and cranial morphology as primary markers, while positing the Caucasian group as the original or most beautiful form, thereby introducing an implicit hierarchical element that influenced subsequent interpretations of racial difference. These 18th century systems persisted and diversified throughout the 19th century, as anthropologists and naturalists incorporated additional metrics such as craniometry, blood group analysis, and regional variations. Subcategories proliferated, for example within the Caucasoid group, with distinctions like Nordic, tall, fair, long-skulled, and Alpine, stocky, round-skulled, or within Mongoloid, separating East Asian from Siberian types. Broad typological labels, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid, Australoid, and Amerindian, emerged as standard, each tied to geographic origins and phenotypic traits, reinforcing the notion that race inherently shapes abilities, character, and social standing. Critically, these historical classifications directly inform the doctrinal foundation of the term racist, framing it as belief in or advocacy for race as an explanatory category for human differences. The system's emphasis on determinism, where physical markers correlate with behavioral or intellectual outcomes, establishes the technical linkage between race and ist, positioning the word as a descriptor for those who uphold such categorized divisions as meaningful and consequential. Origins and early usage of racist. The word racist entered the English language in the early 20th century, with the earliest documented use as a noun and adjective appearing around 1919. Formed directly from race, in the sense of human groupings by physical and ancestral traits, combined with the suffix ist, indicating a person who adheres to or promotes a related doctrine, the term modeled itself partly on French equivalents like Race-ist. It emerged as a replacement for the slightly older racialist, attested from 1910, which had described individuals who emphasized racial differences or advocated theories of racial superiority in political or social contexts. Closely related, the noun racism appeared first, with evidence dating to 1902 to 1903 in American usage, notably in a speech by Richard Henry Pratt, who employed it to critique racial segregation and advocate for assimilation. This initial application established a critical tone from the outset, positioning the term not as neutral description but as a label for doctrines perceived as divisive or unjust. By the 1910s, racist began to denote someone subscribing to the belief that race fundamentally determines human characteristics, abilities, or moral worth, with an implied hierarchy often present. In the 1920s, usage expanded amid growing awareness of nationalist and supremacist ideologies, particularly in European contexts where certain racial theories gained prominence. The word solidified as a pejorative identifier for those who advocated racial doctrines, even as its technical meaning, belief in race as a primary explanatory factor, remained intact. Early applications consistently targeted ideas seen, by some, as harmful, linking adherence to racial determinism with prejudice or exclusionary practices. Critically, this origin preserves the word's technical accuracy as an advocate for race's determinative role, where the suffix ist denotes ideological commitment to the root concept of race. Early connotations, however, transformed the otherwise neutral components into a descriptor of doctrinal excess, embedding negativity that has characterized the term's application ever since. Evolution of dictionary definitions for racist. Dictionaries incorporated the term racist during the 1930s, primarily in addenda and supplementary entries, where it was defined as the belief that racial differences determine inherent human traits, capacities, and abilities, often accompanied by an assumption of superiority. These early inclusions explicitly noted discrimination against other races as a practical outcome of such beliefs. The definitions reflected the word's emerging usage in critiques of segregationist policies and emerging ideologies, establishing a foundation that combined doctrinal adherence with prejudicial consequences. This initial framing positioned racist as a descriptor for individuals who elevated racial categorization to an explanatory principle governing human worth. By the early 1960s, dictionary entries began to expand the scope of the term to encompass institutional or structural dimensions. The 1961 edition of Merriam-Webster, for instance, integrated subjective references to social systems purportedly founded on so-called racial bias, mirroring the growing and intrusive prominence of civil rights discourse and scholarly analyses of segregation as embedded in laws and institutions. Despite this broadening, the core denotation, belief in race as a fundamental determinant of traits and abilities, remained unchanged and primary. The addition of institutional senses did not supplant the original meaning, but rather illustrated how the belief could manifest beyond individual attitudes into organized practices. In the 1980s, definitions further solidified the equivalence between racist and theories asserting that distinctive human characteristics and abilities are determined by race, frequently presenting this as synonymous with belief in the superiority of a particular race. The Oxford English Dictionary's 1989 edition reinforced this continuity, linking the term to older concepts like racialism, while maintaining emphasis on the doctrinal aspect. These revisions preserve the technical structure of the word, where ist denotes advocacy or belief in the root concept of race as explanatory. The 2020 update to Merriam-Webster's secondary definition introduced explicit clarification of supposed systemic oppression, describing it as the subjective perception of oppression of one racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, specifically and prejudicially referencing white supremacy in some contexts. This adjustment drew from biased corpus evidence of sociological and self-serving activist usage since the mid-20th century. Critically, these incremental evolutions maintain fidelity to the word's etymological components, race as determinant combined with advocacy, while documenting real-world application without erasing the foundational belief-oriented denotation. The changes reflect adaptation to documented linguistic shifts rather than wholesale redefinition. Denotation versus connotation in Race-ist. The denotation of Race-ist faithfully captures the literal construction of the term, race, as the categorization of humans according to shared physical characteristics, ancestry, and other perceived traits, combined with ist as the marker of a person who believes in or advocates for the significance of that categorization. This denotative meaning identifies individuals who regard racial differences as essential and determinative of human variation, including traits, abilities, and capacities. The technical accuracy of this sense derives directly from the word's formation, where the suffix functions to indicate ideological commitment to race as an explanatory framework. In contrast, the connotation of racist introduces a strongly emotional and evaluative layer, depending on a variety of factors, that has been present since the term's earliest documented uses. From the 1902 appearance of racism in A Critique of Segregation to the 1919 emergence of Race-ist, the word has consistently carried implications of prejudice, hierarchy, and supposed harm. This pejorative tone arises from the historical contexts in which the term was deployed, particularly as a label applied to doctrines justifying unequal treatment or exclusion. The distinction between denotation and connotation reveals a divergence. The literal components suggest a neutral descriptor of someone who treats race as a primary human characteristic, yet the accumulated usage embeds subjectivity and judgment. Connotation thus frames the belief as flawed or morally objectionable, diverging from the purely technical sense of advocacy or belief without inherent valuation. This subjective framing reflects the social and historical forces that have shaped the word's reception. Critically, the persistence of the denotative core ensures that racist continues to function as an accurate identifier of individuals who advocate for race's determinative role, even as connotations evolve through cultural, political, and discursive influences. The interplay between these layers demonstrates how a word can retain etymological precision while acquiring broader evaluative weight, allowing it to serve both as a technical descriptor and as a marker of ideological critique in contemporary discourse. Contemporary implications of racist. In contemporary discourse, the term racist continues to denote a person who advocates for or believes in racial determinism, maintaining its technical foundation as an agent noun formed from race and the suffix -ist. This core meaning identifies individuals who regard racial categories, defined by physical traits, ancestry, and perceived shared characteristics, as fundamental determinants of human traits, abilities, or social outcomes. The persistence of this denotative sense ensures that racist remains a precise descriptor for those who elevate race to an explanatory principle, whether in discussions of individual differences or group hierarchies. Modern applications often invoke the word in debates over equity and representation, where belief in such determinism is critiqued with evidence of genetic continuity and clinal variation across populations. The added layers in some dictionary definitions, particularly the emphasis on so-called systemic implications, reflect evolving usage patterns rather than a departure from the word's etymological structure. When racist is applied to structural analyses, it extends the advocacy component to include support for or acceptance of systems that perpetuate racial disparities, such as institutional policies or societal norms tied to historical categorizations. These expansions appear in secondary senses within certain lexicographical updates, where the term encompasses not only personal belief but also the broader consequences of treating race as a primary divider. The technical foundation as belief in or advocacy for racial factors endures, allowing the word to apply consistently to those who view categories like white, black, Asian, or others as inherently determinative of outcomes or worth. Critically, contemporary use of racist upholds the word's accuracy in denoting ideological commitment to race as a key human characteristic, even as connotations introduce subjective dimensions. The subjective negative framing, present since the term's early 20th century origins, shapes its application in a variety of discussions, where it serves to identify views deemed prejudicial or hierarchical. This subjective influence arises from societal shifts, including civil rights movements and ongoing debates over categorization, yet it does not overwrite the denotative core. The word thus functions as both a technical label for racial belief and a culturally loaded term whose implications vary by context. Ultimately, the contemporary implications of racist illustrate the dynamic interplay between etymological precision and real-world application. While the term's structure accurately captures advocacy for race as explanatory, its usage in modern contexts often highlights perceived harms associated with such advocacy, reinforcing its pejorative role. This duality ensures that racist remains a versatile yet anchored concept, adaptable to analyses of belief while reflecting the subjective forces that shape linguistic evolution. The word's endurance underscores its utility in examining how racial categorizations continue to inform perceptions of human difference. Conclusion: the enduring technical core and connotative layers of racist. The term racist stands as a precise linguistic construct, denoting belief in race as a determinant of human characteristics through its root and suffix. This technical accuracy endures across historical and modern contexts, identifying advocates for racial categories. Formed from race, understood as the categorization of humans by shared physical traits, ancestry, and perceived differences, and the suffix -ist, which designates a person who believes in, adheres to, or advocates for the root concept. The word literally describes an individual who elevates racial factors to explanatory status. Whether applied to 18th-century taxonomies or contemporary debates, the denotation consistently captures the ideological commitment to race as a meaningful divider of human variation. This compositional integrity ensures that the term retains its etymological clarity, serving as a reliable marker for those who view racial distinctions as fundamental rather than incidental. Connotations have layered understanding, transforming neutral components into a descriptor of doctrinal perceived harm, yet the denotation remains faithful to its formation. From its emergence in the early 20th century, the word carried a critical tone, first appearing in contexts that condemned segregation and later in opposition to ideologies emphasizing racial hierarchies. This pejorative shift, evident in early dictionary entries that included assumptions of superiority and discrimination, reflects real-world usage rather than an arbitrary imposition. The negative framing does not erase the technical meaning but enriches it, illustrating how language adapts to social realities. Belief in race as determinant, once potentially descriptive, became associated with prejudicial outcomes, ensuring the term functions as both identifier and critique without losing its structural foundation. Critically, the word's evolution underscores its role in analyzing human categorization, with its core meaning providing a stable framework for understanding racial advocacy. The persistence of the primary denotation, advocacy for or belief in race's influence on traits, abilities, or worth, allows the term to serve as a consistent analytical tool across time. Even as secondary senses, such as prejudice, discrimination, and oppression, entered dictionary definitions through advocacy usage, the foundational sense endured unchanged. This stability enables precise examination of how individuals or doctrines treat racial categories as essential, distinguishing mere recognition of differences from doctrinal elevation of them. The word thus bridges etymology and application, offering insight into the interplay between linguistic form and societal interpretation. Ultimately, the term racist exemplifies the dynamic nature of language, where technical accuracy coexists with evolving connotations shaped by historical and social contexts. Its components maintain fidelity to their original meanings, yet the full word has acquired layers that reflect broader cultural shifts. This duality, precise denotation alongside subjective connotation, highlights the term's enduring utility in discourse on human classification. By preserving its core as belief in race's determinative role while incorporating other implications, racist remains a powerful descriptor capable of illuminating both individual convictions and collective attitudes toward racial difference.